What's up, everybody? My name is Elevated, and today we are going to do the EMEA Kickoff Pick'em bracket. Now, this is a huge bracket, triple elimination, but there will be three teams that are going to Santiago, Chile for the first Masters of the year, and I'm going to tell you who I think those teams will be. For those of you who don't know me, I was the assistant and then head coach of Global Esports last year, and I've been following the game very closely since 2020. I'll try and speed through these as much as possible, but I will give you a little bit of reasoning as to why I think the results will go the way that they do. So let's go ahead and hop into our very first game, which is going to be Navi against Carmine Corps. Now, this one is very difficult for me to predict right off the bat, just because both teams had quite a bit of roster shakeup in the offseason. Both teams are going to be led by kind of inexperienced IGLs. Obviously, Angel has retired at the longtime Navi IGL, and his protege Shao is taking up that mantle. On the side of Carmine Corps, Shados, who has bounced around on a bunch of kind of low tier teams in EMEA, is now going to be leading Carmine Corps, reuniting with his former head coach Eng back from Gambit. Both teams have, I think, pretty good coaching staffs. I'm fairly confident that Angel will transition into a coach quite well. And both teams have a ton of firepower. So I'm very excited to see how this goes. And I think that either one of these teams could potentially be a little bit of a sleeper pick later on, maybe make some upsets deeper in the bracket. And I think the reason that I'm going to pick Navi to go through is just that I trust their players a little bit more. I think that Hero and Ruxic had some really good showings last year, and I think that they should be in a pretty good spot picking up Sociable as well. Carmine Corps sometimes has shown a tendency to maybe go a little bit wild on their meta reads. And so I think I'm just going to go ahead and send Navi through. But I think this is a pretty close to 50-50 match. And I'm kind of just going with my gut here. All right, moving on to Foot versus Mates. This is another fairly difficult one to predict. And I think it's going to just be a little bit hard to read how these teams are going to function going into the season. Foot had a lot of turmoil last year. They kicked their coach, they brought him back. Their offseason seems to have been kind of side grades with their players, at least on paper. Meanwhile, Gentlemates was kicked out of the league after not securing their ascension spot again, but then brought back into the league to replace Koi. So lots of turmoil for both of these teams. Gentlemates' roster, if you're not familiar, I'll jump over to the roster mania page real quick just so we can take a look at it. Mini, Martine, Starkso, Bippo, and Glyph. So kind of a wide variety of players. Definitely some talent here. I'm a big fan of Mini. I've been a fan of Starkso just because of Ascend winning champs in 2021. And Martine has been a very solid player. I don't know too much about Bippo, and Glyph was playing collegiate last year, which is kind of crazy. I'm also not entirely sure how the calling structure of this team is going to be, just because Mini IGL'd some last year. It looks like Starkso will be IGLing this year. And then Glyph, I believe, was IGLing for his collegiate team. So should be a lot of voices, which can be good or bad depending on how the coordination goes. But I think they kind of have a solid start to their bracket by facing Foot because honestly, I'm not really that confident that Foot is going to have a great year. They can always shoot, but I don't think that they really kind of swung for the fences in the offseason. And because of that, I think I'm just going to have Mates squeaking it out purely on maybe having a little bit higher ceiling for their players. Obviously, this could be vastly wrong if the Gentlemates can't figure out how to coordinate their team. But at the same time, I do think that Foot is probably going to be one of the weaker teams, at least at the beginning of the year. So it's a decent showing, or it's a decent opponent for Mates to start off at, and we can kind of use it as like a measuring stick going forward. All right, we've got some spicy matchups here in round number one of the uppers. Pacific Esports versus BBL. Now, the main thing here is that if BBL were to lose this, it would be a pretty big meme considering that they yoinked the entire roster and coaching staff from Pacific after Pacific ascended. So just purely based off of that, I kind of have to believe that they're going to win this. Now, I will say that the Pacific roster that was put together, or at least the one that is rumored, seems pretty good, and I could see them being a pretty good team as the year progresses. For those of you who are not aware, they have Cupert and Ninja, who formerly played together on Team Liquid Academy. 7 coming over from TSM in America. CNED coming back onto another team to be sort of the veteran, but probably playing Duelist again, which is cool. And then Alorante has been a player that's been playing in the DACH region, and a variety of sort of mixed teams over the last couple of years. We tried him out, full disclosure, for Global Esports last year as one of our potential import slots. He's definitely a good player. And so I think that this team actually has the potential to be quite good. However, I do believe that they formed quite recently, and I think they were trialing for a while. So I just kind of have to give it to BBL just purely on the fact that they've been a team for an entire year, even more, except for one of their players. They've ascended, and they kept kind of everything together. Obviously, there should be some pressure, but at the same time, I think that they're just going to win based off of that synergy that Pacific won't have had enough time to develop yet. All right, let's move on to Ulf against Vitality. So we've got another Ascension team in Ulf Esports. Weirdly, they kicked their coach and replaced him with their former coach after ascending, so I don't really know exactly what's going on there. And then Team Vitality is sort of potentially supposed to be a super team. So the Vitality roster, again, for people who are not aware, Durka, Sayonara, Profik, Yampi, and Chronicle. Now, Sayonara is too young to play in this particular game, so there is that to worry about. However, for me, I just think it's probably a little bit too much to ask for a team that was playing in Tier 2 last year to beat the likes of Durka and Chronicle. I'm fairly confident that Yampi will, continue to grow as an IGL. I thought he did pretty well last year. I'm a big fan of Profik as well. I think that the Vitality roster is probably just a little too skilled and a little too experienced to lose to this, but it's definitely a dangerous game for them to have in week 1 without their full roster. We still don't know exactly who's going to stand in for Vitality either, so that could be a little bit of a curveball. So, I'm not going to be 100% confident when I make this pick, but I just think that just purely off the player quality, these guys know how to win on Vitality. We're going to go with them, send them through to the next round. Okay, moving on to upper round number 2. Team Heretics and Na'Vi. Now, I'm very tempted here to just believe in Angel and go with Na'Vi here. Heretics played a little bit of off-season events, and they didn't look particularly sharp. They did make one roster move where they have removed Miniboot, replaced him with Comeback, and I've heard some rumors that Comeback's English is not particularly great, so they've been struggling a little bit with communication. I'm sure that that's been worked on, and they probably will be in a much better state than they were in the offseason. So it's a little bit hard for me to go with Na'Vi here, just because, this is Heretics that we're talking about. They've been together for a while. They've got really good players. We don't know exactly what the roles are going to look like, just because Woot has been bouncing around, but I would assume that he'll just kind of be that flex guy again, with Comeback being the main duelist. And I think maybe they will be able to outshoot Na'Vi, but this Na'Vi roster has a lot of firepower, so it's kind of hard for me to pick here. And Na'Vi did beat Heretics the last time they met last year, obviously with a slightly different roster. That being said, I think I'm going to just take Heretics because I have to believe that they will look better than they did in the offseason. But I would not be surprised if this was an upset for Na'Vi. Like I said, I think that one of these teams could be a sleeper team. And in this case, for me, it's Na'Vi that's looking pretty dangerous. But we'll send Heretics through to round 3 just to be on the safe side, maybe like 55, 60% chance. But yeah, this one should be a banger. All right, let's talk about Giants versus Gentlemates. For me, I think this is pretty simple. I think Giants really took a step forward last year with their roster. They kept everybody. They kept their coaching staff. It's the exact same team as last year. And the one off-season event that I watched them play, they looked quite good and clearly have, maintained their synergy and their ability to win games that they took into champs last year. So kind of a surprise team last year, and I think that they will continue to be a good and potentially even a very good team going into this year. I like a lot of their players. I think that they kind of are going to be a bit of that gatekeeper team, especially early on in this year, just because of that synergy carrying over of keeping their entire roster together. All right, let's move on to Fnatic versus BBL. Now, obviously, BBL has a ton of firepower. You know, 5 Turkish aimers. They've got the synergy from last year. They are a dangerous team. However, I think Fnatic is probably one of the worst matchups they could have drawn in round number 2, just because Fnatic knows how to handle teams that like to run around and shoot people. I think Fnatic, you know, they showed in the offseason they played an event without Boaster, their, you know, captain, their IGL, and they still did quite good. So I think that I'm going to go with Fnatic just because these guys know how to handle, you know, these sort of young upstart teams. I think they'll be able to dictate the pace. I think it's going to be just probably a level too high for BBL to reach. You know, there's a little bit of a transition period when you come up from tier 2 to tier 1 sometimes, especially when you're facing sort of like the top teams in tier 1. There's just like a slightly different standard at which they play the game. And so we're going to go with Fnatic here. Now, Vitality Liquid is super interesting because I have no idea how this Team Liquid team is going to look. If we go to the Roster Mania page, they have switched camo, I believe, over to playing scans potentially. Miniboo coming in as their duelist. Wayne coming over from Singapore, coming up to tier 1 for the first time, moving across the world to Europe from Singapore. And then Purpo, a player who has been sort of heralded as like potentially could be a breakout star for the last couple of years as a duelist. What role is he going to be playing on this team? It's hard to doubt Nats, but at the same time, I kind of feel like this team of Vitality, even with the stand-in again, is really going to show a pretty high level just because of the quality of players, like the level of I know how to win games they have on their team with Chronicle and Durka. And the fact that Yampy played for Team Liquid for several years, I think is going to make them extra focused and very hungry to win this game. I also think that this team for Team Liquid could be good, but I just genuinely have no idea how they're going to look with their roles. And so I think I'm just going to go with the team that really has, you know, pure talent on their side and has some decent structure coming in with their IGL and coaching staff. So we'll go with Vitality here. Not super confident in this one, but at the same time, I feel pretty good about it. All right, let's move on to middle round 1. This is so weird looking at this bracket with 3 different brackets, basically. Karmine Core Liquid. This one is very interesting again, just because, I mean, what is this Liquid team going to look like? And this Karmine Core team, again, we'll just take a quick look. Karmine Core, Sugetsu probably going back over to the Sentinel role of DOS9 coming in, or Dosia rather. Levin, Firepower Duelist, but also a little bit inconsistent. All these players, a little bit inconsistent, a little hit or miss, other than maybe Sugetsu and Shados. But I think I'm going to take them over Liquid just because I'm not confident that Liquid will come out of the gates swinging. And like I said, I think that I had a hard time picking this game because I do think Karmine Core is going to be pretty good. So we're going to send them through. I think this one's going to be pretty close. I'm not super down on Liquid, but it's just kind of unfortunate they've faced some pretty good teams early on. Foot versus BBL, I think this is a pretty easy BBL for me. I think Foot is probably going to be one of the weaker teams at this tournament. Again, this is a team that, unless their mental crumbles after losing one game, but it shouldn't against Fnatic. Like, this is a good team, and you kind of expected to lose here. I think they'll bounce back and beat their Turkish brothers because I just think that they have more firepower, probably better synergy, and that's going to be the difference here. All right, Pacific Esports versus Gentlemates. Now, this one is very interesting because we get Starkso against CNED. Obviously, the 2 players won champs back in 2021 on Ascend, and we get to see them face off for the first time in a while, I feel like. So I think I'm going to go with Pacific here because I genuinely like this roster. I really like Seven. I think he's a super good flex support player. I think Alorante could be a little bit of a sleeper. And then Ninja and Cupid have been working together for a while, and they've had quite a bit of success on Team Liquid Academy. And then, I mean, CNED on Duelist. It's hard for me to pick against that. I want to see what he looks like abusing the op in the new meta without a ton of utility to chase him off of angles. And I'm hoping that they come into this. Both of these teams are going to be kind of chaotic and probably a little bit sloppy in this tournament. But I think I kind of favor Pacific here. All right. Ulf against Navi. For me, I think that, like I said, I'm pretty high on Navi. I think that Ulf is going to maybe struggle a little bit. They've got incredibly talented players, but I think the fact that they're playing a very, very experienced player in Angel as the coach, Xiao as well, and I don't really think they're going to be able to necessarily out firepower Navi now because I think this new Navi team has a ton of potential to pop off. So unfortunately for Ulf, even though I'm not super down on them as a team, I think they just have some very difficult opponents in their first couple of matches. So we're going to go and send Navi through and send Ulf into lower round one. All right, let's go to the elimination games. Team Liquid against Foot. Like I said, I'm pretty low on Foot right now. I think Team Liquid will at least get one win here at kickoff. I have to believe in Nats for that. We'll send them through. Foot is out. Gentlemates against Ulf. Ooh, this one is tough. This one is tough. We've got some experience, but kind of a wild new team against a team that just won Ascension is sticking together. Oh, good stuff. I think I'm just going to send Ulf through purely off of firepower, but I don't feel confident about that. Young guys losing 2 games in a row, facing elimination in their very first tournament ever at Tier 1. That's tough. No, I'm going to go Gentlemates. Sorry, Ulf. I mean, to me, just the momentum of getting beat twice, having to drop down, play for your tournament life. I really do think that these guys are good, but for me, I'm kind of playing into the narrative a little bit. Watch them win their first game against Vitality, and all of this will be wrong. Okay, let's go back up to upper round 3. So we've got Heretics against Giants. Now, this one is very interesting because I would say at the end of last year, Giants was the better team. And I think I'm probably going to send them through over Heretics here. Even though Heretics is very good, I think that Giants is a team that kind of knows what Heretics is going to do. I mean, both of these teams know each other very well. Like they were really battling for some of those top spots last year in EMEA in stage 2. But I'm kind of on the Giants train right now. I really feel like they did kind of level up, and then they got that champs experience. And then the one time that we saw them in the offseason, they looked pretty good. Meanwhile, Heretics looked, kind of rusty. Again, I don't think Heretics will look bad coming into this tournament, but I'm just pretty high on Giants. So let's go ahead and send them through the upper final. And then here we have Durka and Chronicle against Fnatic. This one is a banger. I really hope that we do get this game. And I think, honestly, I'm going to have to go with Fnatic just because Vitality is playing with a stand-in. And also, I feel like even though Chronicle and Durka are incredible players, part of me just has to believe that Boaster is going to know exactly what these guys are going to do. There's going to be a lot of mind games, right? Durka and Chronicle are going to be like, I know exactly what Boaster's doing. I know how these guys work. We were on the team for a long time. But I also feel like it goes both ways. And as the IGL, as sort of like the mastermind, I feel like we're going to go edge to Boaster, edge to the brains. And honestly, like I said, Fnatic looked pretty good even without Boaster. So I have to kind of believe that their whole team is just solid, very good structure. I mean, we've got the coaches, like Scott, the assistant coach for Vitality, was the assistant coach for Fnatic last year. I mean, please give me this game. Please, Valorant gods, give me this game. It's going to be so fun to watch. We're going to go with Fnatic. It's going to be close, but I think the stand-in is kind of the difference, and obviously Boaster's brain. Okay, Karmine Corps versus BBL. This is another very interesting one. We've got a ton of firepower, good synergy against a ton of firepower with maybe some synergy issues. I think it maybe depends on Karmine Corps' meta read, but I think if they're able to beat Liquid and Nats, they should be able to beat a tier 2 team. And now, I don't mean tier 2 in sort of a derogatory way, but I just think that, Aang, Zeish, like the quality of players on this team, they should be able to handle a kind of just firepower-based team. I don't know. It's close. It's very close here. I think I'm going to go Karmine Corps, but I don't feel super comfortable about this one. Pacific versus Navi. This is, again, pretty easy Navi for me. Like I said, I'm pretty high on Navi. I think they're going to do well. And this team has just not had enough time to form the synergy necessary to beat a team with the quality of players that Navi has, in my opinion. Okay, lower round 2, more eliminations. Liquid versus Pacific. Man, again, what is this Liquid team going to look like? What are their roles? What are their roles going to be? At the same time, I think, and also Cupert and Ninja were on the Liquid Academy, so they probably scrimmed Liquid last year. They kind of know how Nats and Lohan and Yatsen think. This again. I kind of hope this happens because this is some interesting intrigue in this game. I think I'm going to take Team Liquid over Pacific here again, just because Pacific hasn't had a ton of time to kind of come together. I mean, Liquid might not have either, but I do know that they were trialing for a while. They probably had their roster set for a bit. But yeah, kind of close. There's a lot of games where I feel they're fairly close to 50-50s. But we're going to go with the experience of Nats and the leadership of Nats here. All right, Gentlemates BBL. Sorry, mates. I think this is where BBL maybe starts to get a little bit of momentum. I do think that they're a solid team. I'm not super confident in the mates just because I don't really know exactly what the structure of the team is going to look like. Maybe I shouldn't have taken this one, and we should have had like the matchup of Ascension again. But we'll stick with what we've done. I think we're just going to send BBL through. I feel like they should be pretty good. Again, keeping that whole team together, keeping the coaching staff together, well, yoinking it from Pacific. All right, there we go. Upper final, we'll come back to it. Okay, middle round 3, Karmine Corps versus Heretics. Ooh, this is, again, pretty close. Like, this first matchup that I was highlighting, I really do think both these teams could play spoiler to some of the higher seeds. This one, how much do I believe in the Karmine Corps potential? Honestly, if Heretics beat Na'Vi, they should beat Karmine Corps. Let's just go with Heretics. And then down here, Na'Vi against Vitality. Oh, man, another banger. Do I believe in Angel to beat a stand-in? Or do I believe in Chronicle and Durka knowing how to win at all costs? It's a tough one. The stand-in is really throwing me for a loop just because I don't know how much impact it's going to have. How much impact is it going to have? They played off-season events with Sayonara, so they obviously were practicing with him to some extent. They've probably had a good month of prac together with the stand-in before the event starts, which is a decent amount of time, but I think I'm going to go with Na'Vi here. Ooh, I don't know about this. I'm going to go with Na'Vi here. Again, the stand-in, man. It's the stand-in that's making me think like this. Okay. Team Liquid versus Karmine Corps. Ooh, okay. Some bangers down here as well. This is tough. This is tough. Does Liquid go on a lower bracket run, or does Karmine Corps kind of knock them out and continue theirs? Let me look at these rosters again. We've got Sugetsu, Aves, Dacia, Shados, and Levin. We've got Shados against Nats, former teammates IGLing. Nats has a little bit of experience advantage on the IGL, but I think I'm going to go Liquid here. But I don't feel confident about it. Down here, BBL versus Vitality. Again, I kind of just have to go with Vitality. I feel like they're too skilled, too experienced to lose to a team that was playing against Tier 2 competition last year in an elimination game. Chronicle knows how to win these. Durka knows how to win these. Yeah, let's go with Vitality. But again, this is a dangerous game for Vitality. Okay. So, lower round 4, Liquid versus Vitality. Do we have this matchup already? We did. Okay. We had Vitality winning the first time. Well, you know how that goes. Yep, we're going with the stand-in. The stand-in factor. Liquid's going to go through. Again, I don't feel super confident about this, but hey, man, if Liquid gets momentum, maybe they can just kind of go on a run here. All right, let's go to middle round number 4, Heretics versus Na'Vi. It's a rematch. We're going to go with Angel in the rematch here, taking down Heretics, giving themselves a shot to potentially qualify. Upper final? Nope, we're not quite there yet. We've got one more game to look at. Liquid Heretics, Liquid Heretics, Liquid Heretics. I think Heretics is probably just going to be a little bit too experienced, too good to lose to Liquid here, stopping their run. Again, don't feel super confident because I feel like Liquid with momentum could be really good, but we're going to have Heretics beating them and going to the lower final. So that means we go to the upper final, Giants versus Fnatic. Very interesting game. Very interesting game. And I think I'm just going to go. Okay. We're going to do a little bit of a deep dive here. Did Giants and Fnatic play each other in Champs? I don't remember. Let's go look. They did. No, they played each other in Zone, which doesn't really matter. Okay, at Champs. They never played each other. The Giants lost to, Giants lost to some tough teams. Did they play each other in Stage 2? They did, and they 2-0'd Fnatic, but it was pretty close. They also lost to them in Stage 1. This one's an interesting one. This is an interesting one. Will Giants get the first seed? It's hard for me to doubt Fnatic, man. I really feel like this team is just so consistently good. They're so consistently good. But you know what? I'm gonna send Giants through. I'm gonna do it. I'm going to do it. I'm gonna send Giants through just because, Fnatic, they lost a pretty good player. They lost Chronicle, and in this qualification game, maybe we're gonna see a little bit of those cracks of not having the most winning player on your team. Giants, I feel like the synergy buff of coming in with the same roster, same coaching staff, it's going to carry them through in a big game. We'll say that they've learned from their previous experience, and we're going to send them through in the first seed. I don't know how I don't know how I feel about this, honestly. I don't know how I feel about this. Ooh, okay, let me just look at the bracket for a second. If we do this and Fnatic goes through, how do I feel about this? How do I feel about this? I kind of feel, you know what, we're gonna go with Fnatic qualifying in the first seed. Until they show otherwise, I kind of just have to believe in this team. Okay. Let's talk about Na'Vi versus Giants. This one, very interesting. Is this where Navi's run ends? I think it might be. I think Giants is going to qualify here. And then Na'Vi against Heretics, the third time matchup. Man, that's if that happens, that's crazy. If that happens, I think we're just going to go with Na'Vi again, just because if they can win here, I think they probably can win here. They'll have learned how to beat, and I feel like trusting Angel, that's risky. That's very risky. But we're going to go ahead and lock it in. Fnatic in the first seed, Giants in the second seed, Na'Vi in the third seed. You heard it here first. This pick'em will be 100% accurate. I promise. And we'll see you in the next video very soon.